So this is a webinar dedicated to the temples of Egypt. My name is Katerina Satori. I am a very passionate student of ageless wisdom. It is the wisdom that gives me a foundation to stand on when the old structures are collapsing and a lot of people are losing their minds and panicking. And I stand on this foundation and the foundation of many, many initiates of light who were holding the flame of ancient wisdom steady, no matter what was happening in the society around them. Oh, thank you. The camera just zoomed out. So I wanted to bring this transmission, this conversation from many levels. Yes, we will talk about the temples themselves, what they each represented, what people would be drawn to receive, remember, and activate. But I wanted to name the lineage that I personally align and stand on. And it's a lineage of initiates of light, right? So the mystery school lineage, and the mystery school is not a particular university, conscious university. It's a living, timeless pulse of this ageless wisdom from many different paths, many different countries, many different expressions. There were these lovers of ageless wisdom. There was a word for it called theosophy, and theosophy means the love of wisdom. And no matter which spiritual tradition you are drawn to, because we all are drawn to different paths. There is no one path to self-realization. We're all drawn to a particular path, right? There is a beat. There is the most pure thread, and it's a thread of wisdom, right? Everything else, dogma, rules, distortions of the ego. If we can purify that as the dirt from the windowsill, we will find this thread of pure wisdom. And this is where I find my stability. This is where I stand passionately. And this is what I continue to remember and study and teach and share. So if you are here, I have a feeling it's because you're in resonance with the timeless, ageless wisdom. And this wisdom also helps us in three things. It helps us find meaning. If we don't feel connected to the larger meaning, we get depressed, we get disempowered, we get lost and disoriented. But if we find the connection to a larger meaning, we feel guided by this higher meaning. Ageless wisdom also gives us a map, right? A map, a manual. And it's a map that gives us a way to activate this deeper self, right? This flame of wisdom. And this ageless wisdom also gives us refreshment. Why do you think you sometimes meet people and they look younger and younger and younger every year? They might have wrinkles on their face. They might have gray hairs. But this light within keeps expanding and expanding and expanding because they have found this well within, right? And you're like, how do you get so young every year? And it's because they found the way to awaken Kundalini, this fire of the soul, and to regenerate their centers. So this is all the context of why we're drawn to temples. The temples of India called me first in the very beginning of my accelerated spiritual awakening. And I could not resist the call. I said, I need to go. I need to visit those temples. I need to be there physically, right? I didn't have the language about Akashic field and the information in the space and the images of the temple begin to speak to you, and the sounds of the temple begins to activate your brain chemistry. I didn't have any of that on the level of intellect. I had an intuitive call. I must go. And I listened to that call and I went. And that was the beginning of my temple adventures all over the world. The last 3 years, I have taken groups to the temples of Peru. And Kev is here. He went to all 3 of them. And we went to Peru to experience that majestic culture where the temples in Peru are in nature, right? They are built in stones. A lot of them are huge megalithic stones that modern science still has no explanation how they were able to build in such precision and perfection, right? What kind of technology they needed to use. And I began this deep research into these megalithic structures that appear in Maya, in Peru, in Egypt, in India, in other places of the world that have a consistent message, right? So I see temples, number one, as a message from advanced civilization to us. They wanted to send us a message that would be preserved through many generations, not just 100 of years, but thousands of years. They wanted us to remember something. And I will share the slides. The first messenger is the Sphinx of Egypt. And traditional Egyptologists will tell you the same story, that it was built to glorify this pharaoh, right? It's hilarious. And it was built 3,500 years ago. But then there were these independent, passionate, mystical journalists who dedicate their entire life looking for clues, looking for a different story. And one of them is John Anthony West, who wrote a book, Serpent of the Sky, that I highly recommend for you to get a copy, to read it, to study. And the Serpent of the Sky was talking about that Sphinx is much older than the traditional Egyptologists are willing to admit. Some say it's as old as 10,000 years old. And why? Because there are these watermarks on the Sphinx. There are so many documentaries that you can find on Gaia, on Netflix, on Prime Video, that will give you like a deep story of that. But it was so powerful to see that the Sphinx is one of the most oldest messengers from a very ancient civilization, from the time of Leo, a zodiac. So the Sphinx is a mysterious messenger. And when I first learned about the mysteries of Egypt, I connected to it from a very shamanic perspective, from a direct mystical perspective, right? I wasn't approaching it from sacred science, archaeology, sacred geometry. What do these monuments align to the stars? That's one of the pathways, right, you can take, and many do. For me, it was a direct relationship with the heart of Egypt, with the messages that are encoded on the walls. And I shared this story that for me it started with seeing an ankh. Again, intellectually, I didn't know anything about an ankh. I saw a symbol on Facebook where somebody was making this, and I said, I had this instant recognition on the body, and I said, I know this symbol. I don't know where, I don't know how, but I know this, and I need one. I commented on the post, and I opened a conversation with this man who was making these tools, and I said, I know nothing about this, but I am irresistibly drawn. And we start conversing about the ancient mysteries. And a week or 2 weeks later, this person sends me an ankh. It was my very first one that I already gifted away. I collect these tools and I gift them away a lot. So I'm sharing the stories because when the ageless wisdom calls you, it will do it first through intuition. It will pull your attention intuitively. And we need to trust that. Intuition is the voice of the soul. And then you will be drawn to these research, sacred science discoveries where every other gap in your remembrance will be filled. And I hope this class will provide some of it. In 1 hour, there is no way I can cover all of it, but I can go deep with you because I know I attract deep divers. Second thing that happened, I happened to be walking through a street of the old town that I lived. I lived in a town filled with lots of art because I'm a lover of art. And I saw a tiny little sign, Egyptian store. And I walked upstairs and there's Egyptian store in California filled with statues. Again, I knew nothing about them intellectually, but I saw this guy. I was like, I need this guy. I don't know who he is, what he represents, but I want to have this statue with me. And only later I've learned that this is Anubis, the opener of the way. Anubis is the principle of cosmic energy that opens the way to mysteries to you. You need a cosmic principle to open the way for you because your consciousness is ready. The way is sealed for those who are not ready. Because if you're not ready, this knowledge can destabilize the ego too much. This is why. This is the path that does not call many. It does not call masses. And I had to come to this realization because at first, I'm such a passionate mystic. I thought everybody on the planet will want this wisdom. Everybody will hunger for this superfood for the soul. Everybody will want to know the greater mysteries of life. I had a bit of a reality check. And then I realized, you know what? It's not about everybody. It's about those for whom the way was opened. And who are hungry and ripe and who are actually ready to receive this wisdom and to live it. Because the wisdom that we don't live is absolutely just a cluttering of mental space. But when we are ready to live this wisdom, that immortal soul begins to expand in all these directions. Isn't it so, darlings? And you are being led to the realization, the grand realization that you are the temple. I'm kind of like giving you away the ultimate secret. You probably already know this on a level of intuition, that every temple was built to lead you to the ultimate realization that you are the temple, that you are here to host the divine, right? As an expression, you are the expression of the divinity. And this is why when you step on this path, you're going to go through the process of purification, process of clarification, process of realization. So let's go back to Anubis, opener of the way. On one level, we can call it, the dog, half human. This is just the basic understanding. We're going to go deeper. Cosmic principle of intuition, of smelling the truth, learning to discern true spiritual wisdom from fluff. That's what Anubis represents. Now who do we have next that called me? We have Hathor. This is just one of the statues that I brought from Egypt when I was there. I ran out of space. I had so many scarves There's like textiles and scarves and amazing embroidery and also tons of statues. So Hathor is known as the goddess of joy and sensual love and sacred intoxication and dance. There's many different ways we can approach Hathor. But again, she represents a cosmic principle of joy. That when we can connect to joy, we begin to experience life as celebration, life as ecstasy. And if we don't know how to connect to joy from within, we are going to dread our human experience. We wish it never happened, though it will end faster, right? So that was the second stage for me, is actually connecting to Egypt in a very shamanic way through getting to know universal laws and these cosmic principles in the form of Egyptian deities. And I built a relationship with each of them one by one, building altars and shrine and connecting to them through the archetypal planes and shamanic planes. And then year 2019, I was called to Egypt, and I went there to experience the temples themselves. And I'll show you my presentation. I was so grateful that I spent 2 years studying esoteric side of Egypt, right? I was watching so many videos, taking so many classes, studying with so many mentors, and I was just so passionate to understand the hidden depth of Egypt, and I'm so glad I did. You love learning all of this, right? It's so amazing. It's delicious wisdom that nourishes you. Darlings, what I didn't realize, I just booked a tour of like a typical tour. I couldn't wait for the right mystical gathering. I was like, I'm just gonna go. And I went and I loved it. The group was lovely. The tour was organized impeccably. But where I was left kind of empty is because I was given a traditional Egyptologist version. This is Pharaoh, this is pyramid, is the tomb, and this, and it's all about power and Pharaoh and the glory of the Pharaoh and this kingdom and that kingdom. What I didn't realize, in order for Egyptian tour guides to earn their license, which is not an easy task, it's like 2, 3, 4 years. They have to go to university to earn that license, right? And if you do that, if you get the license, you cannot deviate from a standard teaching that is only rooted in traditional Egyptology, which does not include mysticism. So, darlings, that was a huge discovery for me. I was wondering why my guide would not talk about the goddess Sekhmet and Kundalini, She's like, oh, Cobra is the... So I had understanding of that. I was like, oh, this is why they cannot risk their job by telling you another story. And it was the same thing with Peru. When I went to Peru and I had my private guide, and I was asking him, like, how did you earn your license? He's like, I had to go to a 4-year anniversary university to earn this license, and so I was like, find me a guide who has deep connection to mysticism, because I want to know a deeper story. So I wanted to share that with you because it's a real thing, right? So then you want to know a deeper story. So before I open my slides and I show you the images, I want you to hear these 4 facts, and I'll just channel them. I'll just see what comes through. The first misconception that we modern people have, that we're born into. So just how we're born in patriarchy, right? We're born into a system that has patriarchal ideology. We're born into it. And unless you begin to educate yourself, or you had parents or incredible mentors who educate you, who open your eyes to the patriarchy, you have no idea it exists, right? If you were born in a country with misogyny, like me in Russia, and that's all you had, you don't even know it exists all around you. So we were born in the culture that presumes we are the latest humans, us, we are the pinnacle of advancement, that we know the most with our technology, with our modern cities, that we are the most advanced we've ever been. And the story that we learn from history books, that we started from the monkeys and the evolution is linear, step by step by step, and here we are, the best that we could be. When you begin to study ageless wisdom and the cycles of yoga and the cycles of progression of time, not in linear way, step by step, but in a cycle way, the story begins to be completely different. We realize we are not the peak of evolution. We actually de-evolved, and we are coming from a highly advanced culture, right? Ancient times were the most advanced culture, and we have lost connection to that lineage. We lost connection to seeing our place in the cosmos, right? And I'm not going to go into deeper thread of that, but basically there is a view of reality as linear, and there is a view of reality that is cyclical, yugas. And we are right now in this unique cycle that is all about we're returning to the light. We're emerging from the darkness. We're returning to the light. We are embracing the age of Aquarius, the golden age. This is why so many of us are yearned for ageless wisdom. And the only way that we did not lose our way completely is because of these avatars and spiritual masters who've been incarnated on the planet over and over and over again, taking different forms to anchor the higher codes onto the planet. And there has been these initiates who would incarnate to carry the flame, right? And put everything on the line. And we live in the times right now where we have these rebirths of mystery schools, not because it's easy to lead a mystery school, not because it's profitable, because I will tell you, there's more profitable things to sell than a mystery school, not because it's easy, not because it's profitable, not because it doesn't require ultimate purification of you as an initiate, but because it's your assignment, because it's your sacred calling. So for those for whom it is their sacred calling, they find the mystery school that is aligned to them, right? And there's many different ones that are popping right now. And I shared last year that there has been a prophecy from Archangel Collective channeled by Theo. Look it up. It's a very, very well-known channel, Theo, Theo, Archangel Collective. And they said there will be how many mystery schools, like 50,000 mystery schools will be opening left and right over the next few hundred years, that eventually the mystery school will be just as recognizable place to go and grow and learn as any university. That leads me to Egypt, because Egypt is where the mystery school began. I would say we have another civilization even earlier as Egypt, which is Sumeria and Atlantis, right? Where the mystery school tradition was also prevalent. But we have the most amount of physical proof in Egypt. When I was bringing Mysteries of Atlantis 3 years ago, I was working on etheric plane, leaning only on channeled information and my own past life remembrance and inner voyages. I realized it's not enough. And not enough as an evidence in the time that we live right now. Eventually it will be enough. But when I came back to the drawing board and I said, guides, where is the most amount of physical evidence? And my guides told me, Egypt. Go and focus on Egypt as the place in the world that has physical evidence of a different kind of civilization that was so advanced, that had a science of the soul. They had the most earliest records in there's two sacred texts that we work with. Egyptian Book of the Dead is very, very old text, and the Pyramid text. And the Pyramid text talks about what happens to the soul after death. It's inscribed on the walls as a map, step-by-step description of what happens to the soul after death. What happens to DNA, right? What happens, how do we become a star after death? Between our incarnations, we have an opportunity to become a star. Like, I love this, right? If you don't want to take a physical incarnation right away, you can become a star. How amazing is that? How amazing is that? And we have written records of that in Pyramid text, in Egyptian Book of the Dead, which some mystical scholars say it's not the best translation. It's actually called Egyptian book. It's coming forth into the light. Basically, how do you go forward after death? What is the manual for life after life? So, darlings, when we go to Egypt, now I'm going to open my slides and show you some of the temples. I'll just tell you this. I felt overwhelmed by the physicality of that experience, how massive are the stones, how overwhelmingly huge are the structures. And I was contemplating, why was it so important for Egyptians to give you this experience, a very sensorial experience? If they could leave a message in a smaller structure, they would. But the size is a part of the message. So let me open my slides and I'll share with you. You still with me, darlings? I have a feeling that you are. Let's see. We are gonna go here. I created this presentation for you. 1 second. Sometimes we have these rescue helicopters flying around and they're just really loud. So I'm gonna present. I'm using Canva for this. Have you ever used Canva for slides? It's so glorious. It's so beautiful. And I love my slides. You know, I often teach without slides, but I do like to come back to my roots. So portals to cosmic consciousness. And the first thing we said is we're taking a premise that we are not looking at a culture that was connected to the linear time. This was a culture that was teaching that time moves in cycles. What kind of cycles? Birth, death, rebirth, right? Birth, peak, decline, death, rebirth. There were these cycles of time. So when these mysteries call you, is because your soul is ready to experience these temples and the secret texts that are covered. Every wall of the temple is covered with hieroglyphs, which is the language of the light. Some mystics say that the hieroglyphs were the invention of Egyptian god Thoth, which is a principle of illumination. Hieroglyphs literally is the language of divinity, and the Egyptian god Thoth inscribed hieroglyphs on the walls of Egypt. They also say that um, a being who imagined pyramids and the Sphinx is Thoth, and all the temples were designed by his divine companion Seshet, which is the goddess of writing, wisdom, and sacred libraries, also the goddess of Akashic records. I've been recently working with her, and I really love her. And all the Egyptian principles, the gods, they actually come in triads. They come in sacred couples, but they also come in triads, like Thoth, god of wisdom, Seshet, the goddess of libraries, sacred writing, and they also connected to Ma'at, which is the principle of divine order or divine timing or divine order, right? So this is the most enigmatic civilization. You're drawn to it when you are ready to remember. There's two Egypts that I usually teach. There's a physical Egypt that we can go to, and there's a shamanic archetypal Egypt. And if you can study archetypal Egypt and shamanic Egypt before, when you go to a physical Egypt, your experience will be 100 times more meaningful and more alive. So the heart of Egypt is the river Nile. It's the largest river of the world, and the temples were built along the Nile. Let me move this here, right? So the temples were built as homes to the gods, as homes to these cosmic principles that govern reality. And they're created, why? To practice sacred science of the souls. Rituals were not a mechanical rituals. They became that when the Egypt became more and more corrupted, where it lost its way, like most of civilizations tend to happen. I am talking about the golden age of Egypt, where still Ma'at, divine order, was revered and honored, where the divine feminine was honored. Union of masculine and feminine were together. So the rituals, the Nile River itself symbolizes life, death, and rebirth cycle. So people were, they knew that life moves through cycles, that the Nile would flood every year, and there was a time to plant and harvest and a time of fertility. And when the Nile was low, the less water, this was the time for community to come together and to share their resources, right? Life was built around cycles. So the temples were built very strategically. The temples were built on the east to honor the sunrise and to honor the birth, right? The birth of the soul. And also the temples were built on the west to honor the sunrise and to honor the death and the afterlife. Okay, how do we do it? Okay, so of course we're going to start with the Great Pyramid. And the Great Pyramid, nothing prepares you to see it in person. It's overwhelmingly large. It's huge. When you go inside, let me tell you the truth. What you see inside is disappointing. And I want to be an objective person to tell you this right away. Just take it in from the outside. It's huge, it's massive, ritualize, make a prayer, lift up your hands to the sky. You go the inside, and the king's chamber smells like urine, right? It's shocking. Guards everywhere. You don't have any time to be in the sacredness, right? Egypt is a very contrasty experience, and I am here to be very honest and objective about it. You see the sacredness of this ancient civilization, and then the profanity of trash around the sacred sites. Urine smell in the king's chamber, right? So it's like, wow. And because the king's chamber was robbed many, many times, and it was like, these monuments, before they became archaeological monuments, they went through, my goodness, they went through Roman army, Greek army, just vandalizing everything. So I feel a lot of times what I felt when I went to those sites, I felt the wound, the wound of those sacred sites being dishonored by the greedy barbarians. So I felt that pain when I was there. And I just wanted to be honest with you. It's very contrasty. So I feel if you take it in from the outside, if you just like really savor the moment where you first see the Great Pyramid, you're like, whoa. And I also like the light show that you can go and participate at night with lasers and voices, and it's really, really cool. But let's just say we go all the way back in time. Why was it important for this pyramid to be built? Well, the pyramid was built to align to the belt of Orion. The pyramid was built as a cosmic clock and as something to see this place, this location from other planets. The Earth was marked by other advanced civilization, and this is a place of point of connection. Remember, cycles of the Earth, the great cycles. Every 26,000 years we move through the great cycles. So I see the pyramid and the perfection of alignment to the star of Orion as a way of communication to other civilizations, and of course for us as a message from old civilization. Also, the Great Pyramid was a place of initiation. Initiates of all traditions, including Jesus, right? If we take mystical Jesus, Yeshua, as he was called, he spent many years in Egypt. Why? He went to receive initiation, and Mary Magdalene was his partner, was his beloved. She was a priestess of Isis, and they spent quite a few years in Egypt receiving initiations. And initiates would come specifically to spend 3 days in sarcophagus, in that king's chamber. They would take psychedelic substances to overcome fear of death, right? They wouldn't do that just to have psychedelic experience. An initiate had to win the fear of death and to pierce beyond the veil. So the pharaohs would be initiated, the priests and the priestesses, and the initiates of light. The Great Sphinx, here he is. I see the Great Sphinx as an earth altar, as a guardian of the secrets. Once I was there in front of the Sphinx, it's not as large as the Great Pyramid. It actually looks tiny. I was like, oh, Sphinx, you're not as big as I thought you would be. But its energy is bigger. I feel the energy of Sphinx is much stronger than the pyramid itself. Again, the pyramid had the point, like the caps have been removed. When the pyramid was vandalized, the caps that were the way that the pyramids would gather the energy, the ether, it was removed. So the pyramid was deactivated over time, right? You can activate the pyramid through using your mystical rituals in a shamanic way, right? You can connect to the soul, to the etheric energy of the pyramid. So here's the Sphinx. I love the Sphinx. I think Sphinx is amazing as a dream oracle. I work with the Sphinx in my dream time. And it's the key to hidden mysteries. The Sphinx is enigmatic. It reveals its secret to pure of heart. There's something about ageless wisdom. The requirement is come as empty cup, come without ego. If you're able to do that, the mysteries will begin to unfold for you. You know what I mean? So if you are able to do that, that's why the mysteries will veil themselves from people who have extracting reasons. They want to extract and make the mysteries kind of like a mechanic. The mysteries will reveal themselves. I mean, not reveal, disclose themselves. So purity of heart is really important. So the Sphinx has been called many names: Horus of the horizon, keeper of the secret, and Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, believed it contains a recorded history of life, halls of Amenti. Let's go to the next temple because I don't want to spend 2 hours and I gotta speed it up. Darlings, the next temple, usually when you come to Egypt and after you've seen the pyramid and the Sphinx, you take a plane to get to Luxor, or you take a train, a couple of ways. The Luxor is huge. If you took Notre Dame Cathedral, which is in France, it's still not as big as Luxor Temple. This temple was built to value was the cosmic proportion. This was a temple, it's called the Temple of Man from esoteric perspective, but not man as a masculine being. Temple of human, right? Temple of a human being. But in esoteric circles, it is known as Temple of Man, remembering the divine within. So this temple was built in accordance with the human body. The temple is laid out as a human body. So, and this is amazing. With the group that's coming to Egypt with me, we are going to study in preparation to understand this really deeply. But every section of the temple was corresponding to the part of the human body, and also was a map of how do you awaken yourself while in a physical body, from learning to ground, learning to regulate yourself, learning to open your heart, learning to open your throat chakra, learning to open your higher vision. This temple is an exquisite map of awakening and expressing your potential through gradual development of yourself as a human being. It is incredible. Each hall or a chapel symbolically resonates with parts of the body. So I'm going to go next one, and this is in the Temple of Luxor. We find this seed stone. Every temple was built on the temple before. This was very important in all ancient temples. Doesn't matter which one you take, India, Cambodia, they had this very the same philosophy that every temple needs to be built on the temple before to harness the energy and devotion and the prayers. So there's a seed stone, and we have a seed stone in the Temple of Luxor that dedicated to the god of Min. My favorite god, yes, the one with erected phallus right here. This is a god Min. And the Min represented a creative force, fertility, and also love. In one of the incredible stories of goddess Isis that I love to tell her story in many of my classes, there's this one part where the god Min was going through the ancient Egypt, and the goddess Isis, because she wanted to become pregnant, she went to make offerings to the god Min at the temple of Hathor, because she wanted to connect to that principle of cosmic fertility, to be pregnant with a child. So Min was associated with Hathor, goddess of sensual love and joy. And I just love it because, this is an example of learning to decode the symbols and the carvings on the temple. The more you study before you go to Egypt, the more everything comes alive. And this is why I am utterly obsessed with decoding the symbology. What does it all mean? So we see here Min with his erected phallus. This advanced civilization were in, the sexuality was sacred. It was not shameful. It was not something to hide. It was something to honor, and to honor so much that they would engrave it on a temple to make sure that this message lives on. Okay. So, okay, the temple is the body. So the Luxor Temple with huge stones was built to give us a map that our body as a temple. And the way that people would learn that, they would come to the temple, yes, during a festival. Ancient Egypt were a party civilization, but not in the party that we understand. They saw life as a gift and life as celebration. So they had the most amount of festivals. Twice a month, they would have some kind of a festival to a particular deity. So people would come to the temple. The temple was a heartbeat of the city. Everything was happening in the temple, right? So any kind of a commerce and marketplace was built around the temple. To any kind of a legal matter you need to resolve was around the temple. The temple was kind of like, a main square in the city, in the European city now. Everything was around that main square. In ancient times, it was all around the temple. So you would have 2 festivals a month, and you would come and you would always bring offerings. You would never come in empty-handed. It would be an insult, right? So you would come empty cup, humble heart, joyful spirit. You would bring what you could. So farmers would bring seeds, gardeners would bring beautiful flowers. Flowers were always an offering to the temple. Whatever you could bring. But specifically for the temple of Luxor, you would walk through the temple in silence and reverence. And you would perceive the temple as your cosmic self, right? You would look at the giant columns and you would say, this is the size of my cosmic self. As within, so without, as above, so below. This temple was built on the principle, universal law of correspondence. So you would meant to walk through the temple with a sense of awe. And how far we've gone, right? If you go to Egypt right now, it's pictures and little videos and Instagram this and Facebook this. But in ancient times, it wasn't like this. You would walk through the temple and you would become an ear. You would become an eye. You would allow the temple to influence you. Right? You would enter a relationship with the building, with the sacred stone. So that's in order to remember that you are the vessel for the divine. It's really, really profound. I can't wait to go back to Luxor. And then I'm going to skip this because I can't wait to teach this. But basically, the pyramid texts teach us that we have 9 different bodies, 9 or 10, depending on the tradition. So Egyptians, when they would come to the temple, they would, just by being there, their main intention was to activate higher levels of their being, to remember who they are. Okay, so the Karnak is a temple that is connected to Luxor. It's in the same place, in the same city of Luxor, but it's connected. It's basically like the Luxor is here and the Karnak is here, and it's connected by this row of sphinxes. It's the most amazing experience. Karnak was very different from Luxor. If Luxor Temple was all about temple of a human being, this is your potential as a human being. Karnak was all about the pharaoh and what does it mean to embody power, embody divine power. What does it mean to lead with authority? So it was all about the pharaoh. And the Karnak Temple was built over 2,000 years. Every pharaoh would add something to it, right? And so this temple, esoteric meaning, is the progression of creation, how the temple is not built in one day or one generation, but it continues to develop and continues to express its creative potential. So Karnak Temple, you see there's these huge statues, the message of this temple about the power of divinity and the different story of creation. So what I love about Egypt is you don't have one single story of creation. Like in a Judeo-Christian tradition, there is one story of creation that is recorded, let's say in the Bible or in other books of that nature. In Egypt, you have many stories of creation. Why? And because they believed their cosmology, their philosophy of life was creation. It wasn't something that happened long time ago. Creation that is happening right now. Creation that is happening right now, and in many different ways. And this is why there are so many versions of creation in ancient Egypt. So the birth, the death, and the rebirth was the key understanding in ancient Egypt. So the Valley of the King is the next temple that I'm going to present to you, and it's a temple that is completely underground. Again, I wish I had more preparation before I experienced that, but it's basically 60 tombs. Each tomb takes you on a voyage to understand how Egyptians saw life after death. How deep was their knowledge of what happens after death, and how you need to prepare yourself to meet that portal. So every single tomb has inscription of the sacred prayers and sacred magical spells, protection spells, to help the soul to navigate the underworld. What I love about this is if you study Tibetan teachings, they also have Tibetan Book of the Dead. Why do we have two different cultures that have preserved these two manuals of how to meet death? And in Tibetan tradition, they teach about 40 days, that the soul takes journey, 40 days to cross through many different levels in the afterlife. I find this topic so fascinating. I've always been fascinated what happens after life, after death. And Valley of the Kings shows us. You see the most vibrantly preserved afterlife scenes because it's underground. It has not been damaged by the elements. For example, the external temples. So the Valley of the Kings has the most preserved. You can even see the colors, right? Egyptians were fascinated by the afterlife, deep metaphysical science. Death was not a taboo. It was a common knowledge that the soul is going through many incarnations and the preparation has to be made. And you can see the colors, right? The colors were very, very important. Like here's Anubis, the opener of the way. Here's the eyes of the Divine Mother that is watching over you when you cross, right? When you go to the different dimension. So the colors was very important. This kind of a dark brown was the color of earth, the earth element, also the color of the womb. The blue was the color of past life memories, the lapis, right? The color of the stone associated with Isis. Okay, then every temple is covered by hieroglyphs, and I have been deeply fascinated by understanding hieroglyphs. They are also known as language of birds, and we did not understand. So like hieroglyphs, we were not able to read hieroglyphs until the discovery of Rosetta Stone, just like 70, 80 years ago. This was a language that we could not understand. So again, The mysteries, this ageless wisdom reveals itself when the time is ready and where people are ripe to receive it. All right, moving along, because I'm already at 2 hours. Temple of Isis. Why is Temple of Isis is so beautiful to all of us? Because this temple was dedicated to awakening of the heart. If you love Goddess Isis, you are a person who lives through his heart. Isis teachings were all about the heart. How do you keep your heart open? How do you open the heart within the heart, the spiritual heart? How do you learn to love no matter what you experienced in your life? And Isis is an example of a priestess, an oracle, a leader, a queen who went through incredible challenges, initiations, and losses. And her love prevailed. So she is a ultimate magician. She is the goddess of magic, also known as Heka, and she gives us initiation into the divine feminine. So this is why the goddess of Isis calls to so many of us. Okay, I don't have time to go over this amazing female pharaoh, but she was a lover of Hathor. So we also have a temple of Horus called Temple of Edfu. And Horus, to me, he represents that higher nature. Yes, it's a symbol of the falcon or hawk, but Horus represents this higher self in us. And when you study Egyptian stories, the story of Horus battling Set, his uncle, it's a story of us battling chaos, battling forces of disorder that come to our life, that and battling our lower nature that we need to transform. We all have the lower nature. We all have our shadows, and we see what happens when we don't transform our shadows, right? We see the shadows erupting on a collective level right now. Breaks so many of our hearts to see people who were spiritual leaders entangled in the shadows, right? And deep shadows. So what Horus and Set teaches us is a story that we each have a higher nature and a lower nature, and there is a tension between them, and the aim of initiate is to continue to transform and master lower nature for the higher nature to be expressed fully as a warrior of light, as a spiritual warrior. Okay, so this is what Horus means. Darlings, we went through 1 hour so fast, and I wanted to share with you that I am holding a vision to bring, I have 2 invitations for you, and I'm going to go through them pretty rapidly. So we have a mystical journey to Egypt this November. My passion is to bring these temples of the world trips. I am intuiting a journey to India in 2028. There is something special that I'm going to talk about in 2027. So basically every year there's going to, at least that's my prayer. I can't control this. I can't guarantee you this. This is my vision. This is my prayer. Every year to go to a particular temple. And this year in November, we are putting together a group to Egypt. There is already 8 of us. We need 11 people to make the trip happen. If you would like to join us, this is what we will be talking every single day of our trip. We will be talking about the deeper meaning of ancient mysteries. We'll be practicing rituals and meditations together. We'll be sharing delicious food and just being in awe of the experience. If you'd like to come with us, simply private message me. The second invitation that I have, this is, and the reason I wanted to do this is because it's less than a month before the early bird special will disappear. I'm giving $500 off to the early birds, and then it's going to be gone. So I just wanted to highlight that. I also have another invitation for online mystery school, and I'm offering it at 3 different ways of access. There's a self-study path that you can take, and you just go through it yourself. It's for people who you love to study on your own. You thrive doing that. Then it's already created and the path is already built for you. The second one is if you want to study on your own with occasional check-in with me, like kind of a hybrid guidance that is available. And the third one is the full apprenticeship. That meaning, it's a 1 to 2 year journey. Really, for ancient mysteries, if I had somebody dedicated to a 3-year journey, I would say let's do that. That is more spacious, where we check in every 3 months or so, and you are deeply dedicated to the practice, self-study. You have a lot of reading materials. You have a lot of documentaries to watch. It's a deep dive, esoteric, university kind of, right? So I wanted to share that with you. We have 2 options, is to go to the Egypt together with me and the group of mystics that has gathered, or if you are being called to study shamanic Egypt, esoteric Egypt, it's already been created for you. And now I'm going to stop and take any questions or reflections or anything that you want to share with me. Wow. To cover all of this in 1 hour, it's possible. It's possible. I begin to sweat though. Like, oh, my linen dress, it shows me. I begin to sweat through this passionate presentation. English Mystic says, love the slideshow. Darlings, what resonates with you? English Mystic is coming to Egypt. Yes. Great information, right? What I'll share with you, darlings, I keep going deeper. So, the first time I taught about Thoth was in 2008. That almost 8 years ago. It is 8 years ago. And I was able to bring as much as was possible at that time. Every year, I just keep going deeper and deeper. And my passion for this wisdom doesn't stop. I feel I became more objective over the years. I let go of this thinking that I need to bring this wisdom to everybody in the world. I'm letting go of that. And I'm realizing that this wisdom finds the one who are ready. And it's for them I share. For them I teach these classes in these webinars because it's really, really profound. So I'll pause and let you yeah, I remember that you shared the emerald tablets of Thoth. Oh my goodness, Kev, you are the person who has so much dedication. I've yet to meet anybody more dedicated than you 75 times. Thanks, Kev. That excites me to go listen to the emerald tablets of Thoth. Hey, Katerina says, how deeply specifically does Egyptian ancient mystic tradition go into discussing the shadow spirits that malevolently manipulate? Oh yeah, you can read about it, darling, in Egyptian Book of the Dead. I love that one so much because it talks about, okay, so here's the thing. Egyptians were really deep about Ma'at, which is divine balance, divine justice, and divine order. They talked about the waning of the heart, that your heart needs to be as light as the feather when you meet death. And Egyptians were, every single day, they would consider the beginning of your incarnation, end of your incarnation. They would live one day at a time because they didn't know when the death would come. And the ones who were dedicated, they were making sure that their heart was light as the feather. So they would constantly do these reconciliation repairs, within themselves. Any kind of malevolent spirit negative entities, negative spirits. You know what I mean? They have a right to exist. Why? Because they exist. And we can't argue with that. Egyptians were really huge on protection, which where I take my roots from practicing spiritual protection. They were doing it from the place of wisdom. So when you study ancient mysteries, the deeper you go, the deeper you learn the need for protection, the need for approaching these spirits in a spiritual science kind of way. That's why the training of initiates were a lifetime. So thank you for asking that. But there was always divine justice, divine order, ma'at, which is divine balance. So every negative intent, every negative act would create a karma, our notion of karma, a consequence, something that you had to repay in that lifetime or another lifetime. So they would live that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you can study Osiris, Awakening Osiris by Normandy Ellis is a translation that I study every single day. And Egyptian Book of the Dead, there's a shamanic, any kind of a mystical scholar that writes the shamanic translation of Egyptian Book of the Dead, you will receive a lot of value. All right, darlings, I'm not going to keep this long. It's been amazing to be with you. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you for being here. And it was wonderful to share it with you. You know how to find me. I am easily searchable, discoverable on the internet. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. And thank you, thank you, thank you.